Hey there, everybody. This is Christine DeGraff with TNT Bootcamp, and we're here today to talk about blogging. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, Ronnie Bincer.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's going to be a great show talking about blogging and how maybe you can do more, and we'll find out why we want to do more with Carolyn.
And we're going to get right into it. Let's introduce Carolyn Capern. Hey, Carolyn, how are you?
Hey, Christine, I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me to come on and chat with you guys today about one of my favorite topics.
Now, for anyone who doesn't know Carolyn, she is a partner at CT Social down in Orlando, Florida, and they do web design, social media, and I'm sure a bunch of other stuff. Carolyn calls herself a digital storyteller. And if she ever had doubts about it before, about whether or not she was, I'm sure at the end of this year she will be sure that she is. So, Carolyn, why don't you tell us about this Blog 360 challenge that you decided to undertake, and why, and how far along you are right now?
Sure. Well, the Blog 365 challenge was something that I set for myself at the very start of this year. It was intended to basically be my way to kick my own butt into blogging. I've been a blogger for a long time, just to step back. I've been blogging since 2005, but it was kind of an off and on thing. I started out with my own personal site, just rambles and musings and quotes and whatever I found interesting myself at the time, and then eventually I gradually moved into this marketing profession that I'm in now, and now that's what I blog about primarily. So last year I was on not what I felt like was such a great role with blogging. I produced what I thought were some good posts, but I didn't produce very many of them, and I felt like I was losing steam. I felt like I just had lost my productivity as a writer, that I could still produce good things. I didn't really doubt my quality. But what I did doubt was my ability to come up with a post, execute it the same day, get it out there, and do what I think writers need to do. Around the end of last year, I came across a quote from a writer named Neil Gaiman, who's one of my favorites. He wrote Stardust, and he wrote Coraline, and all kinds of other books. He co-wrote Good Omens with Terry Pratchett, who died last week. And what he said was, you have to finish things. That's what you learn from. You learn by finishing things. And so that got put together with my frustration at my own blogging efforts, so I just kind of wove it all together and actually, honestly, didn't really think it through, just kind of threw it out there, set myself the challenge, published my first post on January 1st, and I've been going ever since. I have not missed a day. So we're at, let's see, we're somewhere, I think, around 75 posts, maybe not quite. But 31 plus 28 plus 16 today, and that's where we're at.
So, Carolyn, what do you mean by, what do you think you mean by finishing things? Is that like a adding final touches, or finishing meaning just getting something done?
I think that means just getting something done. I think it's entirely possible to nitpick a post until it is unrecognizable from what you started with, and while that's not necessarily a bad thing for your quality, if you do that the way I felt like I was doing it myself, which was just kind of using it as a way to put things off, that can help you, that can cause you to lose speed and cause you to lose steam in your overall goals. So, I mean, you can say that you're going to write every day, and that's a good goal. I think just sitting down at the computer and putting something out every day is good all on its own. But the problem that I started having myself is that I would just put a few words out, a little dribble, and then I'd tweak the paragraph and edit it and edit it and edit it and craft it, and then it would take me upwards of a month to get a post done. And I wasn't entirely feeling happy about that. So I said, you know what? I know my quality may go down from this, and I've accepted that as a possible outcome, at least temporarily. With churning out posts every day, you can't necessarily expect yourself to stay at incredibly high quality, like masterpiece quality all the time. But I've just I decided to kind of coach myself through that thought process and just start producing and tweak as you go.
Well, that's one thing I do want to say is when I first heard that you were doing this blog a day for 365 days, and let's also make clear that this is in addition to your full-time job. This is like a side thing, an extra thing. And when I heard you were going to do this, I thought, okay, so we're going to have 300, and even though I know you're a great writer, I thought the only way she's going to pull this off is we're going to see lists, 10 best, 12 most, 5 this, 9 that, you know, and it's going to be crap. Well, so
no, I can't blame you for that.
So when I actually went and looked at your blog and started reading through it, and I mean, I'm planning to probably read every single post at some point. You know, they are well thought out. They are, you know, some of them are longer than others, some of them are better than others, but all of them have value. To, you know, in my opinion, they have value to a reader, and it's not fluff. So congratulations on that. So now, with that said, how in the heck are you doing that? Because my average for this year so far is 0 blog posts. My average for last year, I think, is around 10. And I have that same, you know, kind of way that you were doing things, is I feel like everything needs to be epic. And I spent 8 to 20 hours on each of those 10 posts. And obviously, you can't do that every day. So tell us what you're doing differently.
Yeah, I mean the time crunch per day is a challenge, and I really appreciate your kind words about the value of my post, because that's what I'm trying to do, as you know, as I go, certainly. So how am I doing it? There's a number of different things that I set myself. One is I set myself a time limit. I won't let a post take me more than an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to write. And that's the actual writing, brain to keyboard kind of connection. Then I'll give myself up to another hour and a half or so to edit, put images in, put a heading in, do the SEO keywords, and all that other miscellaneous stuff, plus sharing it as best I can, although we'll talk about that later, because I think that's where I'm weakest, actually. Because sharing and the social media side of blogging is a whole other complicated animal when it comes to time commitments. So the time frame I set myself was one thing. The other key ingredient that I absolutely can't forget is the public accountability element. Because if it was just me sitting in my little hermit hole where I write, I could just keep publishing, you know, every day and never have much of anything. But, you know, by setting myself up with this massive public goal, I essentially set it up so that I would embarrass myself into doing it or not doing it. I have to fail in front of you, in front of Ronnie, in front of Wade Harmon, in front of Dustin Stout, in front of Tina Willis, Chris Pearsall, Chef Dennis, all the people that I care about and respect online, and in addition to the people that I care about and respect offline, like Greg and my clients that I tell about this. It kind of gives you that kick in the butt that a lot of writers need to put their stuff out there.
Now I'm going to ask a silly question. You ready?
Go ahead.
Why? Why do you want to blog every day? What's the point?
Well, there are multiple points, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's certainly not a solo thing. I can honestly say that I feel like I started it for selfish reasons, in the sense that I started it because I wanted to become a better blogger, a more efficient blogger, because I wanted to learn how to put ideas together faster, a more thoughtful blogger, hopefully, because as I go, I'm expecting to evolve my process, evolve my thoughts, and evolve the way I look at my industry. And I use it actually as a way now to, because I'm going through a lot with the company. We're going through growth, we're going through daily challenges with a huge range of clients, and sometimes I just need a way to process that. And I've always been the kind of person who processes things by writing them. It's just my personal ability, I guess, or my personal preference. So I use the blogs as a way to process through things that are going on with me, with my clients, in our day-to-day life. Now, as side benefits, of course, I'm pretty sure we're going to see our traffic go up. I'm pretty sure our search engine rankings are going to be helped because I am being at least somewhat thoughtful with my search terms. But I don't expect any one post to become a dominating force in that kind of way. I'm theorizing. I don't have any solid evidence for this, but I'm theorizing that with the aggregate of posts around these core sets of topics, that it'll ultimately show our site some tangible analytics benefits as well. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
So self-processing is one big part, and then you're hoping it will add value to the traffic, or the amount of traffic will add value to the site.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I do hope that if someone reads it and wants to do business with us, that's ultimately a goal as well. But I don't necessarily write posts thinking this is going to sell someone. I more try to write posts thinking, how will this help someone who might be going through what me or my client are going through right now.
Right.
I mean, this is a huge time commitment, and time is money. You have just said, you're spending between a minimum of an hour a day, upwards of 2.5 to 3. Over a year, I mean, we're talking 500 to 1,000 hours, right? I mean, this could be even more, maybe.
That was never my strong suit, but yeah.
Assuming a low rate of $20 an hour, you're investing $10,000 worth of time in this easily. Do you think that, I guess my thinking is, if you had just taken that money and outsourced it to a writer and said, write me a blog post every day, it's going to free me up for these 1 to 3 hours a day, why do it instead of outsourcing it, is the question, I guess.
Well, if I were outsourcing it, I wouldn't be thinking through the issues on the same scale, would be one very simple answer from that, kind of self-serving, self-processing perspective. I guess I feel pretty strongly about my own identity as a writer and a blogger. I'm not really the kind of person who likes to outsource my ideas, I guess, and I feel like if the number itself, the 365 posts, were the only outcome or the only goal, then I would feel pretty comfortable outsourcing it. But honestly, blogging every day isn't that critical, not for any blogger. I would even argue that it's not necessarily even a sane decision for me. It just happens to be one that I chose to make. But I do think that for bloggers as a whole, setting up that regular schedule, that personal accountability, and that gift of churning out ideas and churning out pieces of value is an important one. And everybody's going to have a different way of getting to that. For some people, that's going to mean twice a week. For some people, it might mean every once a week. I know lots of bloggers who do that lots of different ways, but I think the consistency and the knowing how to get something out there yourself is a big, it's a very important thing for marketers especially to be able to do, because it's our job to help clients understand their own businesses and their own ideas, and it's hard to do that if you don't even understand your own.
Looks like we have a comment here.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the idea that Vivek is saying why is never a silly question. Maybe annoying, but it's not silly. And then he also follows up with that. He's saying that outsourcing is not a good idea in his thinking.
All right, that was outsource what you're not good at, I think.
Outsource what you're not good at, right.
My bad, I read it wrong. So there it is. Outsource what you are not good at is his thinking, yeah. So yes. A follow-up question to why, or is a little bit of a how question. Are you ever posting multiple things but scheduling them so that you actually, one day you might actually churn out 2 or 3 posts and then you've got them scheduled?
That is definitely a strategy. I've thought about doing that, to tell you the truth, but I've never been able to work it in my schedule.
Okay.
The truth is my schedule so far has actually been I'm sure I could work my schedule differently to be able to make something like that happen. But what I've been doing instead is actually just getting up about 5:30 in the morning every day, and that's my writing time. It's before my emails start, thank goodness, because that's, as most business owners know, email's probably the one biggest thing that can derail your day from what you were planning on. So, I get it out of the way before I even open my inbox, and I can get through a blog post in an hour in the morning and in another hour to hour and a half, sometimes a little bit less, with optimizing. So it's a stretch some days. I pretty much uniformly do my writing first thing in the morning, but there are days that I then have to dive into something else immediately and don't get back to actually post the thing until much later in the evening. That's happened a number of times. So I don't commit myself to posting at the one particular time. I just make sure I do it before the clock strikes midnight.
12. Yeah, there you go. So a follow-up question is also, in your lower third, you mentioned that you are a digital storyteller. And that was something we talked about right before we went live. Can you elaborate a little bit about how do you develop the art of being a storyteller? Because I believe that is an art.
Yeah, I think so too, and it's one that I'm still frankly working on myself. I don't actually think that when I first started calling myself a storyteller that I was such a good storyteller, is the funny thing. I just wanted to be able to convey I wanted to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. And I knew I could do
I'm going to blog every day, and I'm going to be a digital storyteller now. Let's see how it happens.
And I was calling myself a digital storyteller before this, but I think that's another thing that kind of motivated me into it. It's like, how can I be a storyteller if I'm not practicing telling stories all the time? So that's actually been something I've actively made a part of this year, is trying to come up with more and more stories to weave into this. And the tricks that I've learned for it, such as they are, is to draw your lessons, but draw stories around them. So today I was writing about the buskers at the Renaissance Festival. I went to the Renaissance Festival yesterday, and I was writing about how it stood out to me that the buskers are basically one of the original forms of interruption marketing. These buskers and vendors at the Renaissance Festival, they were jumping out from all over the place to say, come to my show, buy my stuff, come over to the soap area and check out my free samples, and try this jerky. So they were just all over the place, and it was striking to me that it was kind of like a parallel between ads popping up in our social media stream and just trying to accomplish the same ends. So the story essentially happens. I just try and weave it together, and I'm not sure I have any easy way of saying what that is made of, but it's something I try to be conscious of at the very least, using stories to illustrate lessons.
All right, Nazim's got a question about video, and is that part of your storytelling as opposed to writing words? Now, you had mentioned that that's how you process, right? You process things by doing the writing. So maybe for you, it's not as much of a storytelling assistance, but for some others, it might actually be one of the better ways to do it.
Absolutely.
Have you considered using video at all in what you're doing?
I did consider it briefly. I've always been more of a backstage kind of person. I do prefer writing to speaking as a general rule. So, I mean, for me, the consideration was very brief, but it's not out of any kind of lack of value of video. It just doesn't feel as natural to me.
But here you are. You're on video right now. So
here I am. Can't avoid it. Don't actually want to. This is my favorite way to do it because I think the thing I struggle with about just doing straight video is I have a hard time just talking to my camera. At least doing this, I can see your face and talk to you.
You can always tape a picture of Ronnie's face over your camera, or right under your camera.
That's a good idea.
So a question from Vivek is saying, do you actually tell stories in your blogging activity?
I try to. Some posts have them more than others. The Renaissance Fair one today was an example. I did one a while ago that was on, it was called the ranch dressing lesson, and I actually think that one's one of my favorite posts of this year. My roommate got she had a favorite ranch dressing, and she wrote to the company when they changed the recipe. And so many people wrote to them, and they were all so upset that she actually got them to change, well, not she herself, but collectively, they all got the company to change the recipe back, and she got a free case of about 6 ranch dressings as a result of the letter she sent them. So I used that as a lesson in customer service.
Okay.
Customer service, customer listening.
We'd also talked about the challenge or difficulty of doing storytelling while you're also trying to talk about how-to kind of things. How do you weave a story into the how-to presentation? Have you come up with anything with that yet?
I think kind of like I was attempting to explain earlier, and I'll have to do a lot more thinking and writing about this, is it's kind of trying to use the story as a metaphor or as an illustration of your lesson. So I think some people start with the story and some people start with the lesson. So far I've been experiencing both in equal parts almost. I've had days where I see a story happening or experience a story happening and I say that's my thing for tomorrow. And other days I wake up with a lesson in mind from the previous day and I have to try to come up with a story that illustrates it. So it's a bit of a half and half kind of thing for me. I don't know how it would be for other people.
Okay.
Now, have you woke up any morning with no idea and just started writing, or are you brainstorming in advance and thinking kind of like a plan for the week or an overall, like do you have some fallback topics? How are you doing that?
Yes to both. Yes, I have absolutely written up or woken up with no idea of what to write. I've actually trying to get away from that a little bit. I've been trying to go to bed having thought of what I want to write the next day. I do have a backlog that I keep of post topics. I actually do my writing in Microsoft OneNote. It's fairly similar to Evernote. It just happens to be the platform I prefer. And I keep, anytime I think of a post topic, I try to get to my phone as fast as possible and add it to a new page. That way, when I need a new topic, when I'm really struggling, I can go back to one of those ideas and try to flesh it out into a full-length post. And I've done that a number of times through this year. Starting in April, I'm actually aiming to create myself a content calendar for that month of post topics, and I want to see what kind of a difference that makes. That's kind of the nice thing about doing this every day is I can try lots of different techniques over the course of this year and see what works best. So far, this rhythm is working in the sense that I've been producing the posts, but I think continuing it as it gets to the 100-day mark and the 150-day mark, it's going to get more and more challenging, at least a little bit. So
that was very appropriate for this comment that Mary had asked earlier about having a calendar of topics or a content type calendar. So right now, yours is the calendar, 24/7, right? It's every day.
Yep, okay. It's whatever's in my brain, but like I said, I'm going to be experimenting with that in the next month. So I want to see if that affects my quality, if that affects my ability to think through posts in advance, maybe do a few more research-based posts or things like that.
Yeah, Bob had the same question if you use a content or editorial calendar. He also wants to know who has most influenced your storytelling and how you tell it.
Ooh, that's a good question. Writers that have influenced me. I mean, I've been a huge reader my whole life. I was an early and avid reader of Harry Potter. I read fantasy authors like Neil Gaiman, who I mentioned earlier. I also read history and biography. I was a history major in school. So I would say actually probably history writers are the ones that have most influenced my writing over time, people like David McCullough and Walter Isaacson. But it's been pretty varied, and I've actually been trying to read more fiction lately so that I can infuse some more of the fictional storytelling language into what I write.
So you've inspired, I think it's Geralia, with your determination.
Yeah, I guess that's one word that I could use to describe this. I keep calling it crazy.
All right. And Candy's asked a question here. Do bloggers, meaning potentially you, or actually anyone that's a blogger, experience slumps like writers might? And if you do, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that that they do. In fact, I think a lot of bloggers experience it, and I have a writer client who actually does some writing about this type of stuff too, and what she calls it is your writing muscle. And just like when you're doing a physical workout, which is something I don't do very much of, but I'm given to understand that when you do it, sometimes your muscle groups get tired, and sometimes you have to push yourself over slumps. And writing, I think, is the ability to write, whether it's blogging or fiction writing or writing books or whatever, is just the same as any other type of muscle. You have to keep working it out. And I think, that's kind of another reason why I do this. It's good for your writing muscles.
Okay, so Bill Graham's asking, do you maintain a word limit, or is the message more important?
Yeah, the message is definitely more important. I sort of have an unofficial word limit, but not really. My posts are...
Do you have like a goal, a word number goal?
Yeah, my goal is to hit at least 500 words a day. I haven't done that completely. I tend to pretty much go with what the message requires. I think my shortest post was about 375 words, and my longest is around 1,200. So that's a pretty sizable range. Fairly consistently, I've noticed my longer posts happen on the weekends when I have more time, when I feel like I can take a little extra time to really work on them. But it's happened during the week too. So.
And there was a comment from Nazim a while ago saying you're doing great, and I think that was specifically aimed towards you and video. So just to let you know.
Thank you, Nazim. I appreciate that.
And Faranaz Parsi asks, are your topics interrelated or independent of each other?
Okay. So they're all interrelated in the sense that they're all about digital marketing. Some of them veer off towards entrepreneurship or other semi-related topics, but for the most part they stay in the realm of being about social media, about blogging, about copywriting, website development, and SEO. So that kind of sphere. But within that, they can be more interrelated because I sometimes do series. Like last week, I did pretty much a whole week-long series on website development, and I went through the process one phase at a time, one phase per post. And I did one a while ago on creativity, and one at the start of the year, I think, on success habits for the new year. So it's actually fun to develop little mini series based on that, because I don't have to try and squeeze it all into one mega post. I can say I'm going to do one after the other after the other.
So in my mind, it's related. Clearly.
Yes.
In yours, what about images? Do you find it difficult to find the right image, or have you kind of given up on that? And you just throw in? Do you throw in images for each of your posts?
I do, actually. I always have a featured image because that's kind of needed just for formatting on our website. I used to be pretty bad about putting them in the text, but I'm really lucky to have my partner Greg, because he keeps an eye on my posts and tells me when I'm not doing things that are fairly simple but are really good for each post. So he's kind of my quality control, and he got a bug in my ear a few weeks ago about how I wasn't putting images in the posts. So I started doing that a little more, and I actually like how it's improved the visual quality and the readability of the posts as well.
Okay, so choosing the image, how's that come out?
Choosing the image is a pain sometimes. Actually, choosing the images are a great reason to write more visually, because and tell more stories, because then you all of a sudden know more images to put in the post. It just works more smoothly. I built up a whole big resource list, and a list that's still growing, of stock image sites, free stock, uncopyrighted, open source images. So that helps a lot. I just go to those and cruise through. But that's probably, aside from the writing itself, that's the most time-consuming part of what I do. It's really pretty challenging. But, as you go through, and I actually do find that as I write more visually, as I add more metaphors, more similes, it gives me the knowledge of what I'm looking for in an image.
Nice. So a comment here from Vivek saying that Seth Godin is a prolific blogger, but he seems to not worry about word count or length of the post at all, but he's actually more popular for his shorter posts. And I've actually heard it and believe it, that when someone has more time to do the edits, it can actually get shorter.
Yes. I think it was Blaise Pascal who said, I lack the time to. I would make this letter shorter, but I lack the time to make it so. I know. I've had my eye on Seth Godin actually for. He was not really an inspiration for this, but I became conscious of the fact that he publishes every day when I started this. And I wish I could write as well as he does in such brevity. I really envy that skill. And I'm hoping that maybe there's a possibility that by November I might be starting to get to halfway to that point. But he's been doing this for years, so he's definitely a role model for his short posts.
Nazim, I just did a screen share while you were talking. He said, "Nice site. Love the screen share. Very clean."
Thank you.
I definitely agree with that. It's the site is very, very nice looking.
Thank you. Greg did a beautiful job developing it.
Great. Well, then, as far as other ideas of building stories into what you're doing, what are your goals alongside helping you process what's going on with your business and getting value to the site in search engines and things like that? What other things do you hope to achieve from your massive effort here?
Well, I would say one goal is to learn how to better define our audience and learn how to better write for that audience through the posts. I think audience is a tricky thing for a lot of bloggers to figure out because you start with this vision in your head of somebody and then you realize that it might not look like that. Or even worse, sometimes you start with this vision in your head of everybody and you need to narrow it down. I'm not actually sure which one's more difficult. I've kind of fallen in between. I have about 3 or 4 audiences in my head that I sometimes write for, and I want to get that a little bit more solidified so that I can add more value with the posts.
So how are you getting feedback as to whether you've reached the proper audience or what the audience is?
Well, that is a good question, and it kind of brings up the biggest challenge that I've had this year, which is keeping up the sharing on social that's really required to get the most out of this effort. I don't need to tell you guys how much time social can suck up of your life. I think everyone here kind of understands it. But that's been a struggle for me because I don't want to be seen as a spammer. I don't want to just put out my own stuff. I want to be a good community member and share other people's content and things like that. But the hours in the day thing just intrudes sometimes. So, I always try to at least put it in the company buffer account so that it can go out on the CT Social page. And I do my best to keep up on my own personal profiles, but I get the most feedback, to circle back to your original question, I get the most feedback through comments and interactions that I have about the posts. So I want
Are those comments happening on your site, or are they happening primarily on social properties?
Both. They get tied together because we use a social comments plugin in our site, so it shares it. People comment via their Google Plus or Facebook profiles, so it's a little bit melded. But I also have private communities that I sometimes share posts to, so I get a lot of feedback through there. I've even gotten some questions through there, which has been nice. That helps as much as anything else when people ask questions that I can then answer in a blog post. Mm-hmm. That's like, here, give me a content idea. It's great.
Yeah. So you want to read that one, Christine?
Yeah. Bob wants to know, so do you post the title first and then the content, or are you doing the content and then coming up with a working title? How do you work it?
Yeah. Titles are really tough for a lot of writers, I think. because you have to kind of balance between stuff that'll make someone want to click and stuff that doesn't make you feel like a hack for using a clickbait title. I usually start with the content. I often have a working title at the top that I almost never wind up using, just something that I label it with in my OneNote. And then I usually wind up reworking the title a couple of times, at least if I have time, before I'm happy with it. I actually found some tools that I'll look for and share again in here afterwards. But there was a tool I found that actually analyzed your title. And
was that analyzing the emotional impact and what type of title it is?
Mm-hmm, yeah, it was from Contently, I think. Something like that. And yeah, it analyzed your title, analyzed where it was strong, whether it used emotional language, whether it used provocative language, and things like that. Not that that's the only hallmark of a good title, but it certainly does help when you're trying to make an impact and get people to click on your posts. And I think that's something else I'm hoping to get out of this year, learning what people get out of blog posts, what makes them get interested in them in the first place, which is a tall order, I think, but I think hopefully I can come up with at least some anecdotal evidence.
We also have to do some analysis at some point to figure out what worked, what didn't. I know you got a question queued up there, Christine, but I'm curious, are you doing analysis as you go? Are you able to take any time or someone help you do that?
I haven't really yet. I'm thinking around the end of this 3-month mark is going to be a good time to do that, though, because I'll have about 3 months worth of material to look at and see what's most successful. I know the ranch dressing one was one of the most successful in terms of share power.
Yeah, so that kind of goes in with Bill Graham's question. He wanted to know if you are able to gauge the engagement between the longer or the shorter posts. So I'm sure you don't quite have that yet.
No, I don't. I would say offhand, just from kind of gut feel, gut impressions, more of the long posts get traction, which always surprises me. I think that's probably partly because you have to write like Seth Godin to be able to pull off a short post really, really well. Or you have to have just this one solid point that you can get to the heart of really fast, which is a challenge, a big challenge, actually. So
here's a couple comments from Sheila Hensley saying the imagist drives her nuts, hopes to get better at it someday, and she also agrees that titles are hard sometimes, and a lot of times she'll use a working title, like you mentioned, and then ends up changing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, titles are rough because you have to encapsulate it in just the right way. It's I think the bane of a lot of writers' existence, but.
Like you said, you take that. You don't want to go down the clickbait route. I mean, if you get too sensational, or sure, you can come up with something that gets people to click, but then if you don't deliver, on that sensationalism, then it leaves a feeling of disappointment, I think.
Exactly, and the delivery is the key. You can have a clickbaited title as long as what you have on the other side actually fulfills the promise. It's almost like you're setting up a contract, and if you don't deliver with excellent contract, you could be, liable for the other half of your contract. And I would expect to be held that way in comments, honestly.
Well, believe it or not, we only have 1 minute left here.
Oh my.
I know. One thing I wanted to just say, you had said something about setting your, you've put this challenge out there for yourself. You did it publicly so that you're held accountable. What if 3 to 6 months from now you decide you don't want to do it anymore for either personal reasons, you felt like you figured it out, you feel like it's not worth it, or whatever? Are you going to allow yourself to stop if you just make that decision, or are you just going to finish it no matter what?
I've thought about that a lot, actually, especially as the year keeps ramping up, and it's certainly not getting any less busy, contrary to my self-delusional ramblings at times. But it's I'm going to try and finish it. I've made the commitment not only to other people but to myself. But that being said, there are definitely circumstances that make that decision to stop a lot easier. I would feel the need to have those be circumstances that I could explain.
Not that you just didn't feel like it today.
Exactly. That's not going to be an acceptable motivation for me at all. You know, I can pull there's no reason I can't blog every day, even if I'm on vacation, even if I'm on, you know, on a weekend, anything like that. Actually, if it's either of those scenarios, I actually have more time. So I think, you know, I have every intention of seeing this through. I'm willing to, you know, of course, life happens, and I take it on a case-by-case basis. But, you know, maybe if something comes up that I miss one day, I'll make it up. But, you know, we'll just have to see. Right now, as it sits right here, I feel like it's a big stretch challenge for me, but I also feel like achievable one. It's gotten easier to churn out these posts every day. It's much easier than it was on January 3rd. So we shall see.
Well, I'm inspired. I'm going to go write a blog post, I think. So, Carolyn,
are you going to post it? Are you going to actually finish it?
I'm going to write it. I'm going to sit down in one shot and knock it out and give myself like an hour and a half.
Do it.
Carolyn, where can everybody reach you?
Well, you can find me here on Google+. That's a great way to reach me. You can also find me, of course, at ct-social.com. That's where all my blogs are living right now. At Dover Bookworm, over here somewhere, is my Twitter handle. Both of those are great places to reach me, and I'd love to chat with anybody.
Terrific. Anything, final words, Ronnie?
I was just going to say thank you for being part of our series of TNT Bootcamp stuff, and I think this is a great challenge for people. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do anything close to that, but maybe it will increase the number of blog posts that I will try to do. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.